There. Okay. So we are all popping on into our live stations, and the first thing that pops on is always iHeart and all the podcast stations because they are the quickest to live in the feed. And welcome to You Be the Judge. I am Dr. Paul, and we have Marilyn Esquire. So we are here to talk about some legal issues, things to help you out to understand your life so you don't get all jammed up about lack of information, because I think lack of information is what really hurts us. You remember, you can always ask a question here on my YouTube channel, Dr. Paul Dyer at Grandmaster. So you can always put in that YouTube channel. You can always ask a question on Facebook. You can ask a question on Twitter. You can ask a question even on your Periscope. So ask a question. Also on Instagram, you can ask a question. So if you have any questions about what we're talking about, and it's funny, Marilyn, because the House is voting on this thing, right? On this impeachment.
Mhm.
And I had called her. I'm always throwing my stuff out there. I said, "Hey Marilyn, let's talk about the 25th." She goes, "No, we're not doing that." Marilyn says, "We're not doing that today." And they're just over the and it's so true. We're not going to talk about, but let's talk about
Everybody's talking about it.
yeah,
All the news media is talking about it. On the internet, everyone's talking about it. If somebody wants information about that, they could find plenty of other
plenty.
information. I think we need to concentrate more locally and
Yes.
see what is affecting us personally
And,
and
and,
discuss those issues.
and you're so right, and I'm like, thank you for, I always need people to keep me on track because I have ideas, and sometimes people need to be like, no, this is a good way to go.
Mhm.
Financial issues when you lose a loved one, it that's a topic that doesn't get talked about.
No,
How do
no.
we?
And I
Yeah.
think especially what I tell people is that we need to prepare before we lose that person. Yes,
Right.
sometimes there's not enough time because we don't know when this event is going to happen. And it's a very, very difficult topic to talk about because people are faced with their mortality. And sometimes it's so difficult that we procrastinate to the point that it doesn't get done when it needs to get done. So, but I like to talk about it proactively because it is extremely helpful if you have your plans all set up, papers all signed up. It makes it so much
That's it.
easier the people you leave behind because then they could actually concentrate on mourning for you as opposed to having to run around funeral homes and choosing this, choosing that, and making all those arrangements that sometimes need to be made.
Because I know when I was married the first time and my wife passed away, and it was a whirlwind. And then when we lost my mother, my brother was trying to handle everything and so many things, even to this day. And she's been dead now, well, going on 4 years. And there's still things coming up that we did not take care of because things just got missed on the legal end, like the house and the taxes, and then there's a lot of stuff that it seemed like it had to go to court, and we was without an attorney. We didn't know what we were doing. They sent us like a book. It was so thick. They were like, and I was reading through it, and it seemed redundant to me, but there was probably pieces in there that I was just like, I don't know what this is. And I called my brother. He's like, I don't know. So we're like, whatever. I mean, so that's the issue. You're what you're discussing is that.
Yeah. And lawyers spend years in law schools. Sometimes they talk about things beside how to charge clients more money than they should. So that's what some of that redundancy is about. And but it is a very, very important subject. And when I talk about it with my clients, I try to make it as light as I possibly can while I impart the information because it is such a heavy subject. Sometimes it's hard for people to get past the heaviness to make some of the decisions that they need to make in order to have their affairs in order.
Because I run a grief group, and you know, and it's a grief group for the church, but anyway, it's a grief group. It's a nationalized grief group. Grief, we've not ever been taught how to grieve.
Mhm.
We've been taught that it's okay. We've been taught that
It's okay for some people,
right.
because we're still taught it's not okay for other people, for some people to grieve, because it's a sign of weakness and you
Right,
can't show
right.
weakness. So it's okay for some people, but not others.
But with the grieving, there's so much time, but in that time, there's still things that has to be done. And that is where the legal issue comes in.
Exactly.
Because legal
Exactly.
has to be done.
Yes.
Cleaning out the closet, getting rid of this or that doesn't have to be done. This has to be done.
Well, it depends. I got a call from a friend of mine whose mother died last week, and they were discussing how they were going to, well, she and her sibling were discussing how they were going to clean up the house, so that they would not have to pay February's rent, because that's an issue too.
Yes.
If they leave the mother's personal items in the house, then the landlord has the right to say, hey, if you don't come and pick it up by a certain time, I'm just going to, do an eviction notice and go ahead and tore her things and put them on the curb, tore her things out, or put them on the curb.
And that's allowed. I mean, that is because they have that right.
Well, they still have to go and to the proceedings, and if there's no probate, if no one has probated the estate, then it leaves you in that gray area of the law as to who to serve, the eviction notice. I mean, all those kinds of things. It's just so much easier if the discussion could happen beforehand. And in my friend's situation, her mother knew that she was dying. She was really, really ill. She was mentally capable of entering into a contract, which means that she had the ability to draw up a will and sign a will. However, I guess her facing her mortality was too much for her, so she could never get her mother to get to that point.
So what's one of those things that what's the first thing you tell a client when they come into your office and this is upon them? Like what's the first step?
Okay, well, first of all, since we're asking specific questions, I just want to do my little disclaimer over here and say that we're talking about general information. This is not a substitute for legal advice.
No.
If you have specific information, like contact information, I think is somewhere where people could reach out to me or reach out to another lawyer and ask the questions that you have. But specific information is what I call an estate planning documents. Well, I should say estate planning documents. And what I mean by that is that there's some things that you need to have. Some people, actually, I think in all my years of practicing, I've had one person who called me and talked about an estate planning document.
Wow.
Everybody else has always, no, what I mean is that everybody else talks about a will. Can you please, draw up a will for me? And my response is, yes, I can draw up a will for you. However, because you call me and because I think that you want to be educated about what you're doing, I want to make sure that you understand what you're doing and why you might need more than that. For instance, the Social Security Administration, says that a person is more likely to be disabled before they die than to just die outright.
Really?
So what that means is since the person is more, well, since the person is more likely, I think they, yes, I'm trying to find out if I have the statistics somewhere in terms of what they say. I just can't lay my hands on it in terms of the percentages. Yeah, so maybe I'll come across them later. The reason why that makes a difference is because if I drew up a will for you, a will doesn't take effect until after you die. So if you become disabled before you die, then you have no documents to help you while you are disabled. So let me back up just a little bit. As a competent person, I could make my own decisions. I could go to the doctor and say to the doctor, I want that procedure. I want those pills, or what, if the doctor wants to prescribe me pills for, let's say, high blood pressure or something, I could say, no, no, thank you. I don't want that. I want to try, diet and exercise first. Or I could say, oh yeah, give me those pills because, I'm not going to diet and exercise in the amount that I need to bring my blood pressure down. So basically, I could make my own healthcare decisions. I could decide where I'm going to live. I could decide, how I'm going to spend my money. So since I have the right to contract, I have the right to make those decisions myself. At a certain point, usually because of age, but sometimes because of disability or accidents, the person gets to the point where he or she is unable to make his or her own decisions. And we've seen,
We've seen that before.
Yeah, exactly. And some other things that keep people from making their own decisions. Well, at that point, I'm sorry. And sometimes it happens because of other reasons as well. I remember when I first started practicing, one of the first cases I had was a case involving a 28-year-old who was in a coma. And so because she was in a coma and because she was 28, nobody in her realm had thought about doing some estate planning for her. Therefore, a guardian had to be appointed to make healthcare decisions for her since she was.
Is that like a guardian ad litem?
No, a guardian in that situation is a guardian for an adult because she's an adult.
Okay.
And so she just needs somebody to make the decisions for her because even as an adult, she's disabled and therefore not capable of making those decisions. Now, because she did not appoint a guardian before she became disabled, the hospital had to go to court and ask that a guardian be appointed for her. And my name came up because my name was on the list of potential guardians to be appointed in cases. So my name came up and I was appointed to represent her. And I've had several of those appointments over my career. What I always hoped for in those situations is to have known the person before the person becomes disabled. Because in that situation, you have to make so many different decisions for the person. And it's someone you don't know. You have no idea what the person is, what the person's preference was. So you're constantly guessing and you're constantly, second guessing yourself. And that's after the paperwork. The paperwork is also a huge issue because having to go to court, having to serve the various interested parties, having to do an investigation to find out if the person is disabled and who is a proper person to be appointed as a guardian, and then doing the paperwork after someone is appointed as a guardian. That's extremely cumbersome and expensive. So
But
if
there's
your work done ahead of time, it's a whole lot easier.
And a lot of this is doing in a mourning mind, a grieving mind, a grieving heart. So this is still very heavy to take on when a loved one's passed away, because it's not like, it's very difficult. It's very difficult.
Well, actually, those the documents that I was talking about in terms of appointments of guardianships and things like that, those are documents that are in effect when the person is still alive. And they have suffered some disability, but they're still alive. So some of those documents would include, let's say, well, I'm sorry, those documents are called advanced directives.
Okay.
And those documents include a financial power of attorney. So that way someone could receive whatever uh, financial assets that are coming in. So let's say you get a check from Social Security, a check from retirement, something of that sort. You could then get the person you appoint as your agent and your financial power of attorney could then get those funds, put them in an account, and pay your bills. I had a situation like that where this woman, when I was appointed to represent her uh, as her uh, as her conservator, and the only asset that she had was a condo that was paid off. However, we had to wait for the condo to be sold so we could get the money to pay for her, for her senior living care.
Okay.
I had to use all my charms and beg the retirement place to keep her for months until her place was sold and we could actually reimburse the retirement home that she was at.
Now, if a person had, like, because you were put in place, but if a person had the authority, would they remove you from doing what you did, or could they have the right to do it? I mean, how does that work?
Well, that's the whole idea behind having these paperwork ahead of time. Because if you have them ahead of time and you appoint somebody, somebody who knows you, you don't have to go to court. Yeah. So if you have an advance directive, and there's several types of advance directive. I talked about the financial power of attorney.
Right.
That allows somebody to take in money and pay your bills and things of that sort. You have the healthcare power of attorney, which allows somebody to make medical decisions for you, decisions as to where you live and what sort of care that you get. And you have the living will that says what your end of life choices would be.
Okay.
And then you have the medical order life sustaining treatment, which is, most is what people call it, which allows you to make decisions which advises your agent as to what you think you would like if you were in that position. And I think most people know about representative payees, where if the only thing you're getting is a social security check, you could go to the Social Security Administration and appoint a representative payee.
I didn't know that.
Person could then, that person could then get your Social Security check and pay your expenses for you. And then there's the trust. And a trust is a whole lot more complicated because it tends to be for people who have more money. But those are the different types of advance directives. You want to put these things in ahead of time and appoint your agents, your guardians, your and have your power of attorneys in order. That way, if something were to happen, whoever you appoint could just say, okay, here's a copy of what I have. This person appointed me, and so here are my credentials. Could you please start dealing with me now?
I have two questions that it just jumps out at me.
Mhm.
One is always finance. How much
Mhm.
is this going to cost me? And is there a cheaper way to do it? Like legal Zoom or something. Can I type it in a web page and it automatically happens? Can I do it? Is there a simple way of doing it?
Okay. First, what it costs depends on what you need, and each person might need something else. You might live in the same household, but you might need something different from someone who is in the same household. You might have the same assets and might need something different because your beneficiaries are different. What you want to do is different. So each person has it has to be individually made for each well, I'm sorry, it doesn't have to be. It is much, much, much preferable for it to be individually done for each person. I see lots and lots of, do-it-yourself will services. I see sample wills on the internet. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them. You know what? I am saying there's something wrong with them.
I was going to ask you, because there's something wrong with it. What's wrong with it? Let us know.
What's wrong with it is exactly what I was saying. In terms of sometimes you sign something, but you don't know why you're signing it. Fine, I could get a sample will from the internet and just put my name on there and all that kind of stuff. But am I sure that it's witnessed properly for the state that I'm in? Am I sure that it includes everything that I want to have included in there? I tell my clients that they're not paying me for the documents themselves. They're paying me for the information that I'm giving them in reference to the documents. For instance, if you want to know how to keep your hard-earned money from passing on to, your son-in-law or your daughter-in-law, because you want to keep it to your linear family, it's really important for you to go to a lawyer, because if you don't do it properly, and it's quite easy to do it properly, but you need to go to a lawyer so that the lawyer could draft the documents. And I could say exactly how to do it right now, but it doesn't mean that whoever is listening to it is going to be able to do it properly. And I mean, it's like when I watch a recipe on the cooking channel and I'm like, oh wow, that's so easy, I could do that. And then and then I attempt to do it at home, and all of a sudden the masterpiece that they show on the cooking channel and the results that I get at home are totally different things. And
the second question, you touched on it. Mm-hmm. If it's challenged in court and if it's not done properly, then it could be totally shattered.
Yes, exactly. And that's also something else, because if you don't have a will, sometimes the family members end up fighting. I mean, even if you have a will, sometimes they end up fighting, but it just seems to be worse when there's no will, because everybody, it's like a free-for-all almost as soon as the person dies. It's just a whole lot easier to have all these documents in order than it is not to have them. And
has someone thought of a way that we can make this, I don't know, because like you say, it's got to be, if it's done beforehand, then it gives you time to grieve when that time comes. But even in myself and in the things, even the passings that I've been in, and we've never thought about it. And no one ever thinks about it. Very few people ever think about it. You get it done, because when that time comes, people, it is so heavy to do and grieve at the same time. Your mind is just not clear.
And I have been to funeral homes with my clients, so we could do prepaid burial arrangements. It's like, oh, I want this, I want that. It is not pleasant going to a funeral home. But if you could get all of that paid, and it sounds morbid, and I'm sorry that it sounds morbid, but it's something that needs to be done, especially if you have young children or even young grandchildren. And the reason why that's so important is because you want to appoint a guardian for your children. You don't want them to go with just anyone, and that might be what ends up happening. There just different reasons to do it. If you have your affairs in order, like for instance, you go to the funeral home and you say, how much, this is the package that I want, how much is it going to cost? And you could even make payment plans to the funeral home, because after all, you're not using it yet.
Right.
money is secured. I'm sorry, the money is insured. So, it's not as if the funeral home is, if it goes, bankrupt or something like that, you lost your money. No, the money is in an escrow account and it's your money. The same thing with a grave. You could go and choose a burial plot and pay upfront for whatever it is that you want in terms of a headstone, a marker of some sort. Pay for all of that. And as I stated before, you get the advance directives in case you become disabled. That way, your powers of attorneys are in order, your guardians and your agents already know, hey, if this happens, this is what needs to be done. And in the event that you pass away, your will is already set up. And, and then even before your will is admitted to probate, the people already know, okay, we're called a funeral home. The funeral home will come and pick up the body and do what needs to be done with the body, and the funeral home will then call whoever they're working with and say, okay, when would you like to have the service? We have these spots available. What type of service do you want? This is what they paid for. Do you want something more? If you want something more, this is how much it's going to cost.
Marylin,
I heard of something less, so I'm not going to go there.
I was just thinking, is there a type of service we can pay for our attorneys like we do insurance? If we use it that year, great, but if not, we get some type. Is there a way to put money? Because we don't know what attorney we want to use. It's unlike we don't know what hospital we're going to. Is there a type of format for that to happen? Like, we know we're going to need an attorney sometime, but if I pay $9.99 or whatever, I'm just throwing out a number, a month into this account, that will go to the attorney I pick. Is there something like that out there?
There are two ways of doing it. There are some prepaid legal services that some lawyers are part of, which means that somebody pays, usually unions and groups of that sort have lawyers that they work with who are, I guess, on some sort of a retainer, you might say.
Okay.
Yeah. No, actually, no, I don't want to use that word for that. They people pay into a fund, and so because of that, they have access to lawyers at a much lower hourly rate than the lawyer's regular fee. And what the lawyer gets from that is they have a steady stream of clients. So instead of advertising for clients and looking for clients other places, the lawyer gets a steady stream. What the client gets for that is the client, like I said, get a lower per hourly rate from that lawyer. There's also a retainer where, in the movies, you hear rich people talk about, well, I have my lawyer on retainer, which is, okay, I like this particular lawyer. They know everything about that needs to be known about me legally and what I'm trying to get done. And so I want to pay for their services, whether I use them or not, because I need I need for them to hold a spot for me just in case I need them. And
right.
Now,
all attorneys have that.
No. I think all attorneys wish they had that, but it's difficult to have that because you have to have somebody who has the financial means to do that.
Okay.
It's you could just imagine that there aren't that many people who have the financial means to do that.
So does it?
There also, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. There's also something else where you could say to a lawyer, okay, fine, I want an estate planning packet. How much? This is what the lawyer talks to you and say, this is what you need. This is how much it's going to cost. And then you could say, okay, well, I can't pay it all at once. Can I have a payment plan?
Is that still sort of like a retainer then?
I don't think so. And the reason why I say that is because, and that way you already have the lawyer working on something, and it's just a matter of paying it later. It's more like, yeah, it's more like a payment plan rather than, I will use you if I need you. I'm paying for you, but I will use you if I need you.
Okay, so I just throwing a number out there. What's
Mhm.
this? Because I think people need retainers. I think there's got to be a way, or what kind of services, like you said, some of the services are out there depending on the group. But I think individuals in this climate that we're in needs to understand that they have an attorney on their side that believes in them, that trusts them, because that's important.
Well, that's really important. That's one of the reasons why I like to talk about advanced directives and
Right.
wills and trust and things of that sort, is because I think economic stability is just so important. For instance, you could have the right to go to the theater, but if you don't have enough money to purchase a ticket, then it's difficult to exercise that right. But if you're able to build generational wealth, if your parents were able to pass,
Yeah.
their whatever wealth they accumulated to you with as little taxes as possible. And sometimes when I talk about estate planning, I do sound like, I guess a Republican in terms of, tax here, tax there, tax everywhere. But it's really, really important because
Well, saving money is
you want to
important.
pass as much as possible
Right.
of the asset to the beneficiary. And if you don't do it properly, sometimes there are more
You're gonna lose it.
tax consequences than, doing it one way might cause you to have more cost and more tax consequences than doing it another way. That's why that's important. So when we talked about, hey, you could download this document from the internet, but is that the proper thing? Is that going to cost you more money? For instance, you might say, some people, sometimes we have the discussion about, oh, why do I want to go to probate? It takes so long. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about probate, the
I do,
probate process.
because it was a question I was going to ask anyway. Because there's a difference. Because you hear about probate, and
Mhm.
that's an issue too. Because remember, we do this show to give people the information and the tools to understand where they have to go. I think if people don't understand, especially when it comes to estate planning and planning for this issue that's going to be so heavy, you're going to lose money. You're going to not get things properly done and signed. And then there's going to be a huge fight on your hands when it comes to family issues, because there always is.
Yeah. And sometimes, unfortunately, family members take advantage of one another and they actually steal from one another. So that's also one of the reasons why you need the information rather than just the forms. Yeah, but okay, probate happens when someone has died,
Okay.
and the Register of Wills and all the counties that I've dealt with in Maryland have been excellent. I mean, they're just absolutely excellent in terms of professionalism, the knowledge, the care that they impart uh, to the people that they're, well, to the general public when the general public has questions. I mean, I just have a lot of praise to say about them. And in the state of Maryland as well, nowadays, because of COVID, they have a chat that's opened up at their website. And if you have questions, you could just go to www.registers, plural, that maryland.gov. So it's www.regist, as in Tom, ers.maryland.gov. So you get plenty of information from the website. One of the things that's on the website is that book that you talked about. That's very redundant.
Very redundant, over and over
And
and over again.
sometimes exactly. Sometimes they have information in there, like, that's not a, it is, it's not grammatically incorrect. It's just, the way that
Hold on, Marilyn.
it's not
You just went muffled on us. We're having a little bit of sound issues on you.
oh, okay.
There you go. You're back.
Okay, maybe I'll try to keep my head over here so I won't move
Okay.
around as much. Yeah, it's not because they're trying to confuse people. It's just that that's the information that they need to give. And if you have any questions, they are available. Call them, email them, whatever it is, uh, that it takes for you to communicate with them. All right. So what happens is that if a person
Okay.
dies leaving assets,
And that's anything. Assets means
dies
okay.
leaving assets in their name. Assets means money, a house, a car, uh, retirement plan, just something of value. Yeah, an asset is something of value. So if the person leaves something of value that's worthy of being probated, which means that it needs to be changed for the title needs to be changed from the decedent's name to someone who's alive, and
Right.
sometimes even to another estate, because you might have a situation where a husband dies and certain things were in his name, and and uh in his name alone, and it was never changed. Depending on whether or not there's a right of survivorship to that, you might have to open up an estate for him to transfer it from the husband's name to the beneficiary's name. And then if the beneficiary by that time has died, then it's from the husband's estate to the beneficiary's estate to whoever is alive. Yeah, so
I was just doing a research for the Leggett Group, which is a lobby group, which is we're doing some research on the blacks of the Chesapeake Bay and the blacks that people have come through here that were slaves.
yes.
Going over the slave records that I have been going over, it was on Monday. I was going through them, and you can see the transfer from the people who own the slaves, because that's what they did. It was part of that. It was part of those assets that they were passing on down. And I was looking at the documents. It's funny how you were just, and I had said that I was looking at the slave orders and how they were passed between, because it was part of the estate. The slaves were mostly part of the estate.
Yes.
So it didn't matter who passed on.
Well, because the slaves were property, and
right.
Yeah.
Right. So I was just, it was.
And as property, that was an asset.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yes, they're very instructive. I mean, extremely instructive. A lot of historians look at those wills in order to, well, not just the wills, but sometimes, oh gosh, the listings of the assets that the person left. So even if the person didn't have a will, if they had assets, then there needed to be a record made of what the person left and who was to get what. And so those are very, very instructive in terms of, what a person was worth basically at that time. Unbelievable.
It's sad that it's sad. It will always be sad when you lose a loved one. It will always be sad when you're not in a time to grieve. But it's also very sad when you're going to lose assets, property, money, and things that are rightfully yours that gets lost to the state. It gets lost to something because it wasn't protected. That's also very sad.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And in Maryland, because when someone is married, commingling happens so easily. It's really, really important that if you don't want your asset to go to to whoever your children married, it's really important to, do it properly and to make sure that your children know exactly what they're doing. So in that situation, you might need to talk to two generations. Hey, this is what we're doing, and this is why, and this is what you have to do to protect your rights. Because many a times people have said, oh my gosh, I wish that I had known, because had I known, I would not have done this. And it's pretty simple in the sense that if inherited property is not considered marital property in Maryland unless it's commingled. So all you have to do is
Okay.
keep it from being commingled. And the way to do that is once you get the property, you put it into a different account and you don't add anything from marital property into that account so it will not be commingled. So you could take things out, but you don't add anything.
Add things in.
Yeah, exactly. And there's certain times that you could add something, maybe if it's a loan or something like that, where you clearly say, hey, I am lending, myself X amount of money. And then since it's a loan, you could
Okay.
argue in a divorce proceeding that it was not commingled. But like I said, there's certain ways that you could do things very, very easily so that your son-in-law who decides that, he's going to, you know, to have a second family, someplace, doesn't get your assets to then take care of that second family. Or
And I've seen that movie.
daughter-in-law who, I'm sorry.
And I think I've seen that movie because it
Yeah,
happened.
exactly. Yeah, and your daughter-in-law is taken care of, so that way, if she decides that she wants to to go back to school or something like that, then if your son wants to help her, that's fine. But if she decides that she's just going to use the money to hang out, he could say no, I'm my family, my parents worked really hard for this money, and it's for us to build on, not for you to spend and buy, what is it, Chanel and Gucci shoes
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Well, we want to say thank you for listening to You Be the Judge. We're here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Marylin is just a super fantastic attorney. And more important, she's a human being that cares. And I think that's why this show works, is because we're able to talk about things that I didn't even think about talking about, because it has happened to me. And as I said before, when my mother passed away, when my first wife passed away, things just got all sideways because I didn't know what to do. We didn't know what to do. My brother didn't know what to do. And we lost a lot of things. So thank you, Marylin, so much for talking about this. And people can always reach out to Marylin to ask specific questions, because remember, You Be the Judge is not here for legal advice. We're just talking about legal issues. If you want specific legal advice, please contact Marylin, Pierre personally, whether it be inboxing. It may be in a different state, and then she can direct you to what you need to know, because every state's got its own little nuances, I'm sure. So thank you so much. We're here next week. We got a lot of things that's going on in our world. We got to keep our heads up. We got to keep pressing forward, and we got to keep aware, right? Anything you want to leave us with before we take off?
That is true. I just wish everyone the best. And as I stated, I hope that it's not an issue that they're dealing with. But I have noticed lately that I'm dealing a lot with this issue because of COVID, and people are dying and people are getting their affairs in order. So if you need to do that, just know that there are people out there who are available to help you.
Thank you. And that's true. And think about this COVID, people are dying. And when people are dying, there's this other half to it. So as I've been hearing people are dying, I've been thinking about the grieving. And that's so amazing that, we think about the lanes we're in, you know what I mean? You're thinking about people dying, you're thinking about their assets and how they can protect it. I'm thinking about their grieving and how they can help, journey through this. So God bless. Thank you so much, Marylin. We're taking off. We'll see everybody next week. So thank you for listening. You Be the Judge. I'm Dr. Paul, and this is Marylin.